The water? Yeah. Yeah, through that, I thought that styrofoam was hotter than normal.
Good evening. Welcome to this evening's City Council study session. We have one item on the agenda this evening, retail liquor tasting permit. Deputy City Clerk Jackie McKinnon is here to discuss retail liquor tasting permits. Good evening.
Good evening, members and Mayor Pro Tem. I will be reading off my little paper. It's been one of those days today, so I'm just trying to keep my brain focused. So April 16th, we brought a tasting forward. It was tabled. We had answered a few of those questions you had within the council communication. So tonight we're just going to discuss what a tasting permit is and then try to answer any of the questions you have. So why a tasting permit? We've had several liquor stores inquire over time about a tasting permit for retail liquor stores. Kent Cellars and Off-Broadway Wine and Spirits have been the top two requesting such a permit. So my question to them was, why do you want a tasting permit? Their number one reason was they've had many customer inquiries asking if they were ever going to be doing tastings, what kind of things can they do to help move that along. The liquor stores think it's a chance to interact more with customers by educating the customers on local beers, wines, and spirit producers. Their second reason was to stay competitive with the larger chains, the grocery stores in the cities, and on our outlining cities also. The big one is coming in 2019, 3-2 beer is going away. So once state has figured out all the details, it's very possible that our small little liquor stores that are in a big grocery store shopping center will have to be competing with the grocery store. Because if the grocery store starts selling full-strength beer, a customer might not likely go across to the liquor store. So they believe a tasting kind of gives them that little bit of edge to get that customer back in. And number three, increase in sales for the liquor store, which means increased sales tax and revenue for the city. So once they've been coming in, actually probably for 2 years. When I started with the clerk's office, Kent Liquors, every 2-3 months he was calling, asking about it. And once in a while we'd have another liquor store when they did the renewal, they'd mention it. And it was we just put it on our dream list or our work list. And finally in February, it was something I was able to get to. So with that, we started researching what a tasting permit consists of by looking into state statute and local municipalities around the city of Inglewood. State statute was used in all the cities that we have listed in here for their guidelines and procedures. And that's how we came with our guidelines for ours. So when it comes down to it, when a retail liquor store completes an application, it will need to be approved by our local hearing officer, so we will send that off to the hearing officer because it is a new application. And then the city clerk's office, sorry, I got totally sidetracked there. So it'll go to the hearing officer and then the city clerk's office. Once it's been approved, the city clerk's office will forward the testing dates to the state and local authority. So the items that the applicant has listed on here as their testing days, we will forward those to them. And they do have, if they decide they might only sign up for 60, 70 dates. We don't know what they'll sign up for up front. But they can always come in and amend it, and we can do that for them. And then the city clerk will do the initial inspections of, we'll be there on that Friday, whenever, and kind of see what their setup is. I've kind of taken a personal interest in this and researched 3 other little, Centennial has Davidson Liquors. I've been to Tipsy's and, what was the other one? Apple Jacks. And just to see what their setup was. They basically have a little area they set up for tastings. And just watching it, I would say the first 10, 15 minutes, they were educating the consumer on the product. Be it, this wine goes with this bread, or what do you serve at this dinner. The one I was at, Davidson's, customers were coming up and asking questions. They weren't even buying or sampling the product, but they were in the store, and they knew this gentleman had knowledge, so they wanted to find out. They were making a dinner that night. What could they serve at them? But it was just a really neat setup. So, our goal is to hopefully the liquor stores we do approve, it won't be they're not going to be standing at the front counter giving out samples. They will have to have a separate area, and hopefully it's set up pretty cool like these other ones. And again, all persons conducting tastings must be state certified in training, and then their paperwork will be filed with the clerk's office. It's required. They don't require that with any other license, but for this, they do require that all servers and anybody taking part in this are certified in this event. And then, again, the liquor stores conducting tastings shall be subject to the same revocation, suspension, and enforcements. So anything that can happen, they can serve alcohol or sell alcohol over the counter, The same thing can happen if they overserve somebody or if somebody's not of age. Their main goal is not to set up happy hours on Friday nights and have people go from liquor store to liquor store. After speaking to the few of these, and they know they sent some letters in, they really just want to have that kind of stand out in Inglewood. And they said a lot of their customers go to other cities, or one of the things they said was they've had customers where they'll come in and buy a bottle of wine, and maybe they would have bought a case of the wine if they could have tasted it first. And sometimes they only have a limited editions on items. So it's really about, I think, the educating the customer is what came out a lot to me. And we talked about, how do you protect yourself from just anybody coming in off the street? And, their goal is not to just give away the liquor store. One instance, I believe it was Broadway, and Kent Sellers both have worked in other liquor stores, and they said they were surprised that they ever even gave out a full 4 ounces of liquor. A lot of times these wine connoisseurs are coming in and they sip it, swig it, spit it out. They're not coming in to get their little happy hour on. And again, they can, refuse service to anyone. So if they feel somebody's coming in, abusing it, they definitely, that's the same thing with them selling alcohol over the counter or any kind of liquor. And G. Martinez, the general manager, was going to come this evening. Not really sure what happened there. Maybe he's busy. It's a busy little liquor store over there. So really, that was kind of the general what I have. And now if you have questions or whatever, we can help you with. And Eric and Allison are more than willing to help me out. My counterpart's gone this evening, so.
All right, thank you. And so do we have questions from City Council? Councilmember Barentine?
How many liquor stores do we have
15.
in the city?
15. Mm-hmm. And when I spoke to most of the municipalities, I spoke with Greenwood Village, Centennial, Littleton. They have maybe 3 or 4 tasting permits in the whole city. They said it's just not something that and most liquor stores know if they want it or not. It's one,
You know how many liquor licenses Cherry Hills Village has?
I think they have one.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that I think they might have one liquor store, and I think they have the country club, and I'm not sure how many tastings. I don't think they're not a liquor store. So that's kind of a little. It's a little bit different. You said that there were 4 of them that were regularly wanting to.
Well, we've had Kent Sellers and Broadway, and again, it's been, like I said, over the last 2 years, I just had ones, when they brought the renewal in, they would ask about it, so I just didn't even think it was going to be something that was going to happen soon. And so, yeah, but those 2 were our main ones, but I have had inquiries from other, just, briefly talking to them.
I had to check the name because it's off Broadway, Wind and Spirits, but it's wine, so I just typo there. But those were the only 2, but I went and talked to a couple, and they said they had no really interest in it, so I was kind of interested in hearing from the liquor establishments on why they wanted to do this. The increase in sales didn't happen from being on Sunday either. I think that people don't buy more alcohol just because liquor stores may be more convenient. They just buy it somewhere else. So that was the concern about going from no Sunday sales to Sunday sales. Mm-hmm. Once one store does it, they all have to do it, because then it's just a matter of somebody changing their purchasing habits, not the volume necessarily of what they purchase. Mm-hmm. And then it is still a concern, as it's listed here a little bit better, on exactly the amount of alcohol that somebody's able to consume, not while they're sitting, talking, spending any time. They're probably, I've been to a few, and it's only a few minutes of time that they're spending there. They're not chatting up the person for a half hour, an hour while they're having a drink and relaxing and spending some time. Mm-hmm. So the concern, I think, that the council had was this amount of alcohol that people could drink that actually ended up, could impair somebody for the amounts that are listed here. So that's of some concern. And then the way some of our liquor stores are set up. So it would have been nice to get I guess more of a list of the people that were actually interested in it
Okay.
and had been coming, because it seems like this is not being pushed by the liquor stores, but it's being pushed by us. It seems like it's being more initiated from us from over a period of time of a few, you know.
And it's probably more initiated by these two liquor stores. Again, these are the two that have been constantly calling and asking. Mm-hmm. And like, again, it's just the other ones, it's just kind of whoever, one of the 13 that walks in with their liquor license, they'll ask, you know, when are we going to have tastings? Like, well, it's on the list.
Yeah, so it
I
seems
didn't
just
really
kind of
keep
somewhat
them.
anecdotal, and I was just kind of confused why we seem to be pushing it more than, I guess, the industry. I'm very impressed with what Off-Broadway did.
Yes.
And they're the ones in the King Supers.
Yes, they stopped
They stopped the single, some of the shots that were single serve and no single serve beer, to try and go ahead and make sure that they were taking care of their employees and their other clientele better. And I appreciate the very proactive stance that they've taken in helping clean up some of that area and the loitering and concerns with people that were.
And he was very adamant when I spoke with him on the phone and in his letter that that was not the intention of the tasting. And I think the big thing
Oh,
here,
no, I mean, I think I do. I
he's
applaud
done,
them
yeah.
for what they've done. It's very, very proactive.
And the big thing is the taste. I mean, they have to take certified training.
Uh-huh.
I mean, anybody serving, I mean, it's like anything. They have to be, if somebody looks invisibly intoxicated, they're not allowed to sell. I mean, if Impact or police or even state goes in and sees that, they can get fined or lose their license. And I just, you know, after speaking, I did speak to Centennial City Clerk and Littleton, and they're not having these issues because the liquor license, that's their money.
And do you know the last time we did a sweep? Because I've certainly, while I've been going around, I mean, I've witnessed that probably the law doesn't get followed all the time on serving or selling to people who are visibly intoxicated, and so I don't know what kind of follow-up we have or enforcement we have on that. And those people take a training and are certified as well. So, I mean, it's all a matter of sometimes the enforcement and what's going on.
And we've spoke to Impact about it in Sergeant Reed, and a lot of it is having the resources. Many of the cities have somebody that's all that person does, their enforcement for marijuana and liquor, and they go out. And I know state was out right before Christmas. They did go into 3. I know Walmart was one of them. It might have been one of our King Supers. And the thing is, when state goes out, they don't usually let me know, and what happens is the manager calls me and says, oh, I had state in here checking IDs. So then I have to send an email off to state, and they all passed with flying colors. They weren't, doing what they weren't supposed to do. But I can also, my goal is once I would send these dates to state, I can ask state to follow up with them. But I do want to reach out.
Walmart doesn't sell liquor, does it?
3-2. They sell 3-2.
Just
Yeah.
the grocery stuff.
But they came in one day and they were doing an ID check, the state was.
And I guess that's part of my concern is putting a little bit more additional burden on to already limited resources to kind of enforce what we've got now. And so thanks for addressing that, but it is a concern. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Councilmember Wink.
Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, Jackie, for bringing forth the information you had last time, plus the additional details and facts. I think as the facts are listed here, it's very clear to me that this is something we should go forward with for the benefit of the establishments in our community. I think these establishments, especially given their longevity in the community and the laws that they adhere to and live by as liquor selling establishments, can be trusted to add this component, which is not that far off from what they're doing in the first place. Over the years in many states and many cities, I've witnessed liquor tastings, and I've seen repeatedly the clientele that participate, and I am not concerned that this is something geared toward homeless or inebriated people walking in. I think for any of us to maybe assume that we know how long a client may stand and discuss a certain product, it may be assumption. I would like to see numbers if we want to base any decision-making on that. Let's not assume, is my point. I've spoken with the owners at these 2 establishments as well, and I know the clientele and I know the types of products that they're intending to to educate on and the purposes behind that. I think there's no concern on my part. The laws are in place. The laws are clearly understood. We have lines in place to ensure that the law is followed and to manage the situation if the law isn't followed. And I, again, based on experience and knowledge and facts, believe that the police department isn't suddenly going to be spending 20% more of their time because two establishments may be having a tasting here or there. I just don't see that correlation at all. I can't see how it might happen. So I'm absolutely for this. Thank you for the information again. And for the facts, I think the facts are speaking more than anything else. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
Councilmember Cuesta.
Thank you. And I also extend my thanks. Ms. McKinnon, so that I understand the permit correctly, it is optional. So just because you operate a
Yes.
liquor store in England does not mean you need to apply for the permit. And it allows you 104 days a year, and you can select those days.
Yes.
Although it looks like there's some limitations on it. They can't run it. You can't do 7 in a row.
Exactly.
That would be a license that expires separately from the normal liquor license. They wouldn't run concurrently.
It runs within a year. So they'd have to, if they want to get their license, they'd come in January, and it's for that calendar year.
Thank you. You mentioned that Sergeant Reed had weighed in on this. Did he have any particular thoughts? I guess I would say I certainly don't think that these businesses are open to get their patrons intoxicated. They are there to sell alcohol, so I could see that this is just an avenue to expose customers to new products. I do see a lack of equivalency between 4 ounces of beer versus an ounce and a half I think you get of a spirit. Now, I've been in liquor stores in Denver, and I've never really seen somebody just going for broke at the sampling at the liquor store. So I think that's something that it would be unique. It's within the realm of the law, though it would be allowed if somebody wanted to have 1.5. Did Sergeant Reed have anything in particular to say, concerns regarding this, if he were to adopt it?
Kind of like once in a while we'll sit down and talk about, doing the regulating marijuana in liquor stores and what we can do with impact. So it was more just kind of a little sit down with it. And I did speak to a couple of the impact officers, just like what would that entail. But I think it's just getting along, out with getting with Reed and kind of sitting down and seeing what that guideline is.
And he is aware of this?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, thank you.
I have one more question.
Councilmember Barentine.
Is there any, you got to be realistic. This off-Broadway wine and spirits had a huge change in the way people hanging around and problems in their store and vagrancy. And they had a huge improvement when they stopped selling certain product, when they changed over their model and just stopped selling single cans of beer. That change alone apparently had a huge impact on that whole area over there for people's safety and their perception of the area. So I don't want to turn a blind eye and just, go that there aren't things that people could be doing, or that there are things that you could do that could encourage problems. Is there any effort being put to institute that same kind of issue in any of the other liquor stores? Are they looking at that as well?
Like enforcement, or not that I know of.
All right.
I'm sure they're always looking at
And I
ways
do
to
share
improve.
Councilmember Costa's concern at the amount and for impairment. I don't think anybody has said that liquor stores or anybody else is trying to get people intoxicated, but people do get intoxicated, and they have a responsibility to make sure that they're looking out for that. The assessment piece of it, how long somebody's there, whether they're able to gauge what's going on with somebody prior to them being there, and then having another drink and a half in what is usually a very short period of time, factually speaking, that these aren't intended to be long periods of time. So it is somewhat concerning that somebody would be leaving with that kind of, and so I'm not sure whether we can kind of limit it a little bit more because it's kind of pretty broad right now, and I think that that's quite a bit for somebody to have another couple of drinks while they're standing in a liquor store. So I would like to get
Allison,
that
do
addressed.
you want to speak on the limiting, like we had talked about the state statute, why we were following the state statute? please. Thanks.
The way the ordinance is currently written is directly out of state statute, which is how the rest of the cities are writing their statute, their local ordinances. If the goal is equal competition between cities and businesses that operate in different cities, we wanted to keep everything identical. So just to let you know, the way it's currently written, it's as developed by the state. The state does allow for stricter limits on the number of tastings per year per licensee, the days on which tastings may occur, or the number of hours each tasting may last. So at the local level, you can provide for stricter limits. You can't be less restrictive, but you can be stricter. The only difficulty with that is that when we have state enforcement, they know what the state laws are, and they don't go from city to city and try to enforce the city's laws. So if you make something more restrictive, you need to be aware we're going to have to figure out locally how it is we're going to enforce these more restrictive terms. So that's one difficulty associated with that choice, but I want you to be aware that choice is available.
A couple of questions that I have. Is the fee that we charge them based on how many testings they have per year, or it's the same fee for everyone, whether they choose to have 60 or 104?
It's the same fee. We did research with the cities, and that's kind of how we took that. I mean, some cities were charging anywhere from $50 to $250, and it was for the whole year. So we just kind of looked at what our staff time was, and I mean, most of the cities I talked to, it's just a very simple, application process.
Okay. Thank you for that. And it's really kind of interesting because I've heard from a few constituents and actually been to breakfast with some friends, and the concern of the constituents that called me was they have young people in their family. One of them was a daughter, and they have grandchildren. And this young woman has a problem with alcohol, and this constituent was against it. And I think that it's maybe a bigger problem than we realize, because I didn't seek out these discussions. At breakfast, this friend of mine brought up that her granddaughter has a huge problem with alcohol, that was not aware of her. Nobody was aware of it until it became a major issue. And so, anyway, that is just one of the concerns that's out there. Councilmember Wink.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up, Mayor Pro Tem. I actually spoke with at least 20 individuals in the city. I was just taking a poll, and I understand 20 is a small number and even a group of outliers when you think of 35,000 individuals in our city plus. So when I hear from 35,000, then I can speak with some definitive assurance that this is a thing. However, just a few as well are very much for it and were wanting it for a while and extremely excited for the opportunity for our stores to have tastings. And to the comment about someone having an alcohol problem, they're free to go to any establishment and get alcohol. If I'm an alcoholic and Quest is an alcoholic and Martinez is an alcoholic, we can go drink. That's up to us, or we don't drink. So I don't think a tasting at an alcohol retail establishment is a deal breaker or some impediment that's not already present in our society. I wouldn't see that way, at least. Just my opinion, Mayor Pro Tem. There are liquor stores, probably more than Starbucks around the place. So individuals have their concerns and their struggles and their challenges, and I don't know that tastings make that much more of a difference in terms of availability. These stores are still adhering to the laws and their training, their carding people. I don't think they're giving alcohol just with a blind eye. And I just didn't see the correlation between the tasting increasing the likelihood of somebody being alcoholic
Okay.
or
Thank you.
relapsing or,
All right,
right?
thank you.
Thank you.
Shoot, we may have covered this ground, but I'm glad you brought that up. So a lot of times you go to a liquor store and you'll get carded at the point of sale. You will have selected what you're going to purchase and they're going to card you there. This ID takes place at the point where you would take the sample. You're
Yes.
carded prior to taking
They
the
will,
sample.
and then they'll probably, and again, if it's not the same person selling the alcohol up front, they'll have to get carded again.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you,
Any
Mayor
other
Pro Tem.
comments? Councilmember Olson.
I do not have a problem with this. I didn't the other night. I wanted to make sure that we had a conversation to talk about vulnerable populations and that this is not a systemic issue of one group over another. I think this is a very well-reasoned policy that follows state statute that has a number of cities around us that are already doing them. When you look at Cherry Hills, I know it's only one, but that is often perceived as being in the city of Englewood itself, and vies against Kent Place. Kent Cellar is next to it. So I think there are a number of ways in which we allow for some of our retail folks in this area to thrive and do what they want to do. I'm not going to say I'm an expert at these. I've gone to several. My husband goes to them. They always leave. We leave this area. I know my neighborhood. If they're going to go somewhere to taste, it's up into Denver, just north of us. So, and I've never seen any issue there. But I'm just one person. I do think that the research that you've done here in the background and what will have to happen if there's a problem, if there are police calls, it's going to be a problem. I mean, already that's what we have when, we have other places that we've had it. There have been state sweeps. I think the last state sweep was just maybe 3 to 4 years ago. Were you on when we had okay. It was right before you came then, because we had 17 alcohol providers within the city, which includes not just liquor stores, but restaurants and other kinds of things that were in our own limits here, many of which you would know that got fined and major issues, and some of them people you know very well whose places and establishments received this. So it was a bit embarrassing. So I think that we know that continues to happen. It's often undercover. We often don't know what's going on. I could see that tastings would become a part of that process as well over time. So I don't have trouble with this. I really don't. I think it's a next step for these. I think we'll only see 2 or 3 perhaps use it, and as long as we stay with our limits, and I wouldn't have any trouble bringing it forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Martinez, would you like to weigh in?
Sure, yeah. I also didn't have any trouble with this when it came forward the other night, but thank you for this additional information. It's helpful for me to understand that pretty much every surrounding community offers this, and so we're kind of like the only ones that don't, and that puts our retailers at a disadvantage. And the fact that a couple of them are requesting it or have requested it, I think it makes sense for us to do it. And I think, like Councilmember Olson said, probably not all of the retail establishments will take part in this, but if a couple that want to do it do take part and are able to sell a little bit more than they would have otherwise, then I think it's a good thing. So I'm supportive.
Thank you.
Okay, I need other people to weigh in on whether to move forward or not. I have 3 people willing to move forward.
I'll move it forward.
Okay. All right, so we have consensus to move it forward.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your work and willingness to come
Yes.
back.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Are there
Time
any
to
other-
go take a walk.
If there is nothing else that we need to talk about, we can adjourn this meeting and meet next door at 7 o'clock.
30 minutes.
Go to Nixon's or not?